The first time I saw George was in Cincinnati, when he was elected international president. He seemed different than the other ID candidates and president candidates. There's something about you, but I don't know what it is. There's something very personable and wise about George, very humble also, incredibly humble. But we never got a chance to speak at that, and at Kuala Lumpur we got just a very brief moment to speak. He's a very busy man. So I didn't know what to expect when we met him on Monday night when he arrived in Burbank. It turns out that George's public persona is exactly how he is in person. He is personable, wise, and incredibly humble. George has an incredible amount of experience and knowledge, is willing to share it, but is also interested in everyone else as well. A true diplomat and leader. I was quite impressed. So it gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce him to you tonight. George Yen, Distinguished Toastmaster of Taipei, Taiwan, is chairman of the board of Great Sequoia Corporation, an international management and trading company based in Taipei. He also serves as the chief executive officer of 5 international joint venues. He speaks 4 languages and holds a master's degree in international relations from the Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania. A dedicated Toastmaster for 24 years, George Yen is a member of 4 Toastmasters clubs. While he's been in international leadership for 5 years, he's still active in many Toastmaster clubs. I'd like to pause here for a moment and ask, George, do you sleep? George Yen credits much of his success to Toastmasters. For his international career, George says that Toastmasters has expanded his network of friends worldwide and has provided him with a sense of empowerment, in addition to sharpening his clarity and power in thinking, speaking, and writing. As immediate past international president, George is a working ambassador for the organization. He works with the Toastmasters International Board to develop, support, and modify the policies and procedures that guide the organization in fulfilling its mission. Tonight, George will be presenting the keynote, Toastmasters, Where Leaders Are Made or Remade. Are leaders born or made? In his keynote speech tonight, George will explore this question through 2 decades of leadership journey in Toastmasters and a lifelong career as a serial entrepreneur and business leader. Please help me welcome, all the way from Taiwan, Distinguished Toastmaster and immediate past international president, George Yen.
It's really wonderful to be here in Burbank, California. And I can see that this area, this district, has a much higher standard of speaking and polish than any districts I've visited. Yeah. Is that because you're in Hollywood, the center of the entertainment and communication media? I think it's something to do with it. And also from what I saw this last few days, I was looking around and said, wow, this is what happened. You know, long before I even know what Los Angeles is, I knew about Burbank. I mean, as a high school student going to the international school in Tokyo, every morning I listened to the Armed Forces Network, brought to you from Burbank, California. I have no idea what Burbank is, so I'm glad to be here. Wow. It's got a lot more of richness and personality than I ever imagined it. Because all of that has been sucked away by Hollywood and Los Angeles. So it is really a special pleasure to be here, right in the heart of the entertainment and communication. I don't know, it makes me feel kind of folks coming here talk about communication. You guys live and breathe the air of communication, just like the Romans or the Italians breathe design. You know, it's the atmosphere. What I'd like to talk about is something that's close to my heart. That for this organization that I'm so in love with, and I consider myself a lifer, why is it the $4 million question, our retention rate is only 60%? That's a puzzle that's been with me for some years. Not just in this district, but in our overall organization. Now, the question is, what am I seeing that others are not seeing? And I think that's a personal mission of mine. It's like, if Toastmasters, as our founder said, is going to help make this a better world, to help as many people as possible to see it. And I'm doing this for two reasons. One, with the attrition rate of something like 40%, it's like building a sandcastle on the beach. You keep building, recruiting new members, but you lose them right away. It's a loss not only for our organization, for the dedicated core members who are recruiting, educating, and training them, but it's a far greater loss for the individuals who leave, on average, before they've achieved their CC within 3 years. What's missing? Why? How do we get this message across? Because even though Toastmasters is the fastest growing nonprofit organization in the world today, we're growing at a rate of exceeding 5 to 7% every year. This year, I have to say, our growth rate is exceeding 7%. So something is clicking. And this is what we have been working on with the board, as well as the world headquarters, to how to revamp our organization to make it more relevant to the fast-changing world that we live in particular, with the youth. Because for any organization, the youth is the lifeblood of this organization. If we're going to go anywhere. Otherwise, we just age into irrelevance. I remember when I first joined Toastmasters 25 years ago, I got the manual, and I see the flannel suit of Dr. Ralph Smedley's time. And even I do not identify with that. And today, you probably notice, our manuals is a whole change. The younger faces, more diverse in the faces that model our organization. And we also try to make a thrust into the social media, because without the language of the youth, we cannot communicate with them. So this is what our organization, we are in this time of rapid change. Now, to answer this question of what is it that I seeing that and how do I get it across, perhaps, and here in Hollywood, I should say, I'll tell you my personal story as a way of seeing what I'm seeing and that others are not seeing. And admittedly, I came to Toastmasters at a particular point in my life, 26 years ago, where I was at the pit of my life. I was no job, no family, no friends, returning back to Taiwan. And there, I made a blind date with destiny. I walked into a Toastmasters club. And the rest is history. All right, now that I got your interest, how did I? Let me go back to where I was born in Taipei, Taiwan. When I was about 10 years old, my mother was a great believer in fortune telling, had my fortune told, and bathed my birthday in the stars. Said, "Oh, this young boy, you gotta send him far, far away. Otherwise, if he's staying in Taiwan, you become a juvenile delinquent." Well, that scared the heck out of my mother, because I was the only child. My sister-in-law. So, the minute I turned 16, they shipped me off to Tokyo, Japan to live with my aunt and uncle, and attended the international school there. And that's how I developed what, speaking of the international school, the main language is English. And of course, that has my first taste of failure. I failed my algebra, all the math courses and science. I didn't do well in that. And even in English, I was sent by my English teacher to remedial class afterwards. Well, it's a tremendous pleasure. About a year ago, before I became the international president, I wrote to my English teacher. Remember that kid you sent to after class? He's going to be the international president of Toastmasters. I had to do that. It took me half a century to get there. Yeah. Well, but this is where leaving the cocoon of a comfortable middle-class home in search of what I would be. And of course, my father was an electrical engineer, and of course, I was supposed to be an electrical engineer. But when I failed my algebra class, one, I said, and then all of the science classes, I said, well, I guess this is not where I'm going to be. So what can I do? Well, as soon as I graduated, hopped on a half freighter, half passenger ship called the Oriental Pearl, and sailed across the Pacific for California. And long before Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, I stood on the bottom of the ship. I did. And I said, okay, I was searching what my destiny would hold for me. Fast forward, 20 years later, I achieved the American dream of having my own trading business in Manhattan, a beautiful home in the suburban New Jersey, 3 kids, 2 cars, and a dog. And an American wife from California. I said, well, I've got it made. I mean, I swallowed the whole line. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Sounds reasonable. But I would also share a little how I starting my own business at the age of 33. I was working for an American trading company, fairly large, about $60 million in sales. And I was set to be the manager of the Taiwan office and then promoted to be the assistant vice president in charge of the Far East department. And then my boss quit and resigned. So there I was in charge of the full department, and I was given the task, turn this department around. It's a $10 million company within a large $60 million trading company in steel and metal. After looking at it for 6 months, is how do I turn this business around? Mowing the lawn in suburban New Jersey, suddenly bing to my head. The reason why this department is not making money is because, not because there's not anything wrong with it, but intrinsically, but it's part of a saddle with high overhead of a large company. So come Monday morning, I went knocking on the door of my boss and said, boss, I found a solution to the problem. And I told him my theory that the solution is to spin this off into a small independent company. And I, yours truly, will take it out into an independent company. Fully expecting to be thrown out the door. And he was very calm and he said, let me discuss it with my colleagues. And then next day, he called me in. And he said, George, you have a deal. To my amazement, when you venture something, it happens. And on top of that, they not only sent me off, but the deal was I'm taking over the $8 million business based on a promissory note. I don't have money. I'll pay you over 5 years later from future profits. 20% of before tax profit, but no less than $500,000. To my amazement, they went for it. And really, in looking back, there's a lot of lessons in that. But when I told my father that, he said, you must be crazy. You're in the depth of a recession. And my response was, well, if it's not a recession, they probably wouldn't give it away, or wouldn't want to go for the deal. Well, that's a good argument. So I made with a promise that I'll pay off 20% of the future profits. And not only that, they helped arrange the bank loan. And that's how I started my first business in Manhattan. And 5 years later, I paid them back more than the $5 million, $500,000, and also made my first million. And the lesson I take from that is somehow that one asset I have there was I communicate, I have integrity. One of the core values of Toastmasters. They can trust me on my word, that piece of paper, which in retrospect is like, amazing. So now that we know 5 core values of Toastmasters, That's how integrity, come the first inkling, can carry you so far and give you the break. So that's my start in my become entrepreneur. As I was feeling very high and things are doing well, the world started changing. Only decades later that I realized what is it that hit me. It's this little invention called the personal computer and the internet. Trading was started in the days of sailing ships. Our main tools of trade was this thing called taluses. How many of you have heard of taluses? Oh boy, this audience is much older than I am. Most people don't even have heard of it. It's a ticker tape, and that's how you communicate from the other side of the world. Today, that was replaced by fax machines, and now, of course, emails. So all this shrinking of the world put me out of business. And as I was struggling to save my business, including even buying a factory in Dayton, Ohio, commuting back and forth on a weekly basis to try to save it, my wife from California filed for divorce. I said, oh my gosh, I was hit at both ends. And this is one thing that I learned, that there's certain things, well, what is the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer? Lord, grant me the power to change that which I can, and the strength to change that which I can. Oh, the power to change that which I can, and the courage to accept that which I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that little thing has served me well because that showed me some light. And I come to the conclusion, this is one battle I cannot win. So against the advice of my counselors, that I decided to go back to where I started in Taiwan because there's no libraries. And the advice was that if you leave now, you will lose the 3 children. And that's a tough choice. But I realized one thing that got me through that morass is that if I'm not whole, then I'm no good to my children. So I feel I must take care of myself, become myself first. So I had made a painful decision with a solemn promise to my kids that I will always be there for them financially, emotionally, and as much as possible physically. And with that, I went back to Taiwan with the same suitcase and backpack I came in on the ship on. And it's a point of moment, thinking like, well, this last 22 years in the United States, a dream, the only evidence that that ever happened was my 3 children. It would have been nothing. So there it is. I went back to Taiwan, as I said, no job, no family, and no friends. And then I saw an ad in the Taiwan newspaper, something about Toastmasters, sort of faint idea. But I decided, well, what have I got to lose? I made a date with my destiny. I went into the prestige Toastmasters Club. And that's from the icebreaker on up, things started moving around, changing for me. One of which I mentored a young lady, you remember, which is younger, she was my mentee. Now, I made a mistake. I didn't read the fine print in the manual. It said the mentoring relationship lasts only for 1 year. I ended up doing it for 23 years. So that's the power of mentoring. But not only that, there's all kinds of benefits. You know, as a mentor, that kind of relationship, it doubles the learning. When I give a speech in the Toastmasters Club, I get an evaluation. On the way home, I get another evaluation. That's why I'm on fast track. But as a way of avoiding competing or speaking for the district competition, I win the leadership track. And that there's a notion for me that it's either up or out. I'm one of the personality, I guess, being an Aries. I always need to pioneer and to create, step out of my comfort zone and curious about what's next. And that kept me going to, lo and behold, here I am. So perhaps what my story would say is I was able to have the unique experience of coming to Toastmasters from a low point and looking up and go up the escalator. And I have seen how that power of Toastmasters has also translated into the rebuilding of my life from zero. And my career started taking off following that. One opportunity, my father, a company that's dying, that my father helped found it, well, nobody has won the job, so they asked me, George, why don't you see what you can do with it? So I said, well, if nothing else, I'm not doing it for the money, because I can always go work for a multinational using my English. But here it's a foundry that is going out of date again. And I've been through that route before. Because foundry is, for those who are not familiar, it's making castings for automotive engines, that sort of thing. That's a down and dirty business. That's no longer relevant for Taiwan. It's moving out to North America. And I had to make the painful decision again of laying off 250 employees to shut down that business. And because when I've gone through what I went through, there's nothing so fearful about closing up when you realize my wisdom telling me that I can't win this battle. And I've learned that lesson. And sometimes that is the courage it takes to be able to face what is inevitable and step around it and create a whole new areas of endeavor. So in Toastmasters, it's almost therapeutic for me because whatever I face, I can speak of it in a Toastmaster meeting, articulating it. And this is what I've said always, is that Toastmasters is great because you could be thinking all these things in your own head. And you go crazy doing that. But if you can articulate it to others, first of all, it brings a clarity in your own mind about what's going on. Secondly, when you articulate to others, you're accountable to what is said or is heard. That is in a very positive and self-supporting environment. That is also the wind that keeps me moving. So perhaps in that way, coming where I came from, I can see the power of Toastmasters in a much more clear way than for somebody whose life has been going smoothly. And this is what I've come to, and I've spoken at Cincinnati. What is Toastmasters? And the way I use the metaphor is called the practice field of life. We have, in Chinese word, 道场, or in Japanese, dojo, which is really a practice for doing your martial arts, judo, and the tai chi, or whatever. But where is the dojo, or 道场, for life, the most challenging game that we engage in? We just muddle through the best we can. And unfortunately, by the time we learn a lesson, it's too late. And Toastmasters is a place, I call it the practice field of life. We can explore these ideas and so forth, and establish mentors and supportive environment, so that the steps we take in all that we do, at least we're conscious of what we're doing. And because in Toastmasters, I have also discovered it is a place for self-discovery. It's a lot cheaper than going to a psychiatrist. Trust me. You can say all these things, articulate it, and get rid of all the toxins with you. And trust me, after going through a painful divorce, there's a lot of toxins to get rid of and whatever. And this, given that, you begin to see more clearly. Therefore, I see it, well, to borrow the word of Thoreau, an unexamined life is not worth living. But he borrowed that from Aristotle. In other words, getting to know thyself. So I find Toastmasters is really a tandem, the two wheels of your life, and a Toastmasters, where you can sort of bounce off each other, checking out how we're doing. and it's a journey of self-discovery. So those of you who have seen my interview in the Toastmaster magazine when I first got international president, and they said, what advice would you have for Toastmasters? And that says there's only one thing. Stick with it. Persistence. It will pay off. And that's perhaps a single message. And I know it's hard because our biggest competition for our organization is time. We have so much demand around time, especially the youth. How do you make Toastmasters a priority? Now, one of the professors here was asking me about his university here and saying, where are you? Saying, how do you get students engaged? I said, one thing we're working on is to have colleges give credits for the students who join Toastmaster Achievements. That's a pivotal. And let's face it, recognition is a very important part of our organization. You know, here we are grown, mature adults and so forth, but we still, that recognition, that pat in the back, job well done. Yes, despite all the gray hair, we are still flesh and blood, and we need that hug and we need that encouragement. And so it is with youths too. There's practical. If you give them credit, they will join. And that's how I think we will march ourselves to the 21st century. Because for those of you, and probably not many, don't know, we are the 90th anniversary of the founding of Toastmasters. October was when it started. That is quite impressive. And I've always felt, and I think the evidence suggests that too, Toastmasters is an organization whose time has come. Because we live in an age of lifelong learning. People, companies, hire you not because of your body, like in the old factory of Dickens days, but they hire you because of what you can bring to their mind. They want your passion into it. And all the creativity that comes with that. And I have the privilege of visiting some of the clubs here, like the World Disney, Creative Campus. I mean, that's all that work. And it created a whole industry out of what comes out of mind. And there's also opportunity. I visited the Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district, with 600,000 students. I strongly urge we create a partnership, a joint venture. They can do the educating up to 12th grade, and we start with the Gavel clubs and moving forward. That's the new generation of Toastmasters. Congratulations on a dynamic and wonderful district. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much, George, for the inspiring and entertaining speech. In appreciation of your visit to our district, your workshop, and your keynote tonight, I'd like to present to you, on behalf of District 52, the Certificate of Appreciation. Also, I'd like to present to you a token of our appreciation.